Okay, I am very excited to do this video for you guys. I found it absolutely fascinating to make. I think you guys will love it too. My name is Danny Berg and today we're talking about the top 10 oldest world leaders. We're going to be talking about prime ministers, presidents, kings, queens and heads of state that hold down some of the highest job positions in the world, even though they've all reached very impressive ages. But who is the oldest of these old people? Well, you're going to have to wait to find out who that is, but for now we can jump into our number 10 and we have Emperor Akihito at 82 years old. Akihito is the head of state for Japan and also the emperor. His royal family is the oldest in the world. Akihito himself can trace direct lineage back to the year 660 BC, over 2,600 years ago. He has no direct powers as emperor because for hundreds of years the real power in Japan has either lied with the shoguns or in more recent times the elected prime minister. Akihito didn't become emperor until he was already 55 years old, but had always performed his royal duties both before and after. Despite this, he's not been afraid to break tradition at times. He was the first Japanese emperor to ever marry a commoner, and their children were the first to ever be raised by their parents and not the usual imperial tutors. He's also very passionate about ichthyology, which is the study of fish, and he's even published scientific papers about fish. Nice. Sounds like my kind of guy. Moving on to number 9 now, we have Paul Biya, age 83. President Biya, or to his friends just Paul, I guess, is the president of Cameroon and has been since 1982, making him the longest serving head of state that is not a royal. During that time, he has been quite a controversial figure to say the least. He was once described as a power-hungry comedian. His critics say that he has stayed in power for so many decades because of his cunning political skills. Now, despite all of this, the Cameroonian people seem to really like him. A 2014 study found that he had a 70% approval rate even after all these years. Cameroon also has 48% of the country below the poverty line, while Paul Biya remains the richest man in the country with over $200 million wrapped up in European mansions. Next up at number 8 now, we have Raul Castro, aged 85. I'm sure some of you will have heard of the long reigning Cuban leader Fidel Castro. Well, Raul is his little brother, although not so little since he's quite old. Fidel is still alive, but he gave all the power to Raul in 2006 after falling ill that year. Since then, Raul has been the party chief of the Communist Party, the head of state, and the prime minister, all wrapped in one. These days, he's quite the politician and has helped steer the country to a new economic model. He also sat down for a very historic chat with Barack Obama in 2015 to repair US-Cuban relations, and he even visited the Pope in the Vatican. But things weren't always like this. During the Cuban Revolution, one of his roles was as an executioner, and he was said to have helped kill hundreds of people, including one of his own best friends, after the order came through from his brother. Moving on to number 7 now, we have Sabah al-Ahmad al-Jabbar al-Sabah, aged 87. I did that first time. Yes. Al-Sabah is the Emir of Kuwait, and as such his title is Your Highness. He was made Emir in 2006 but is no stranger to being in power. Before becoming the Emir, he was the Prime Minister of Kuwait and the Financial Minister, credited with keeping the country financially afloat during the 1990s. Basically, he loved being any sort of minister, I guess. In 2002, his daughter actually died of breast cancer, and since then, some think his leadership has become much more passive over the years. Despite this perceived slump, he has always been very outspoken about things that matter to him. He was an active campaigner behind Kuwaiti women getting the vote in 2005, and also seeks to promote Islam as a kind and peaceful religion. Coming in at the number 6 spot now, we have Kim Jong-nam, aged 88. Kim is the president of the Supreme People's Assembly in North Korea. Now, of course, we all know that Kim Jong-un is the supreme leader of North Korea, and his grandfather, Kim Il-sung, is known as the eternal president of North Korea, which doesn't really leave many roles for anyone else. But Kim is the one who meets ambassadors. He's the one who signs treaties and represents North Korea on state visits. In any other country on the planet, these things would mean he is referred to as a head of state. But, you know, when your boss is the kind of person to claim they could drive by the age of 3 and have single-handedly cured AIDS, yeah, you're probably not going to get the title you really deserve. Despite all of this, Kim has been described as enigmatic, pleasant, and very intelligent. But could he drive when he was 3? I don't think so. Coming in at the number 5 spot now, we have Abdul Halim of Kedah, aged 88, and he is the Supreme King of Malaysia. This right here is his full name, and I'm glad it can be shortened to just Abdul. His title is the Sultan of Kedah, which means he is both royalty and the oldest elected elected official in the world. His reign began in 2011 after his election by the rulers of the Malaysian state. It's the only system of its kind in the world. He spoke at the event and said the king is the umbrella to the people and the people are the pillars of the king. When he's not being king and he has spare time, he enjoys golf, walking and some Frank Sinatra, apparently. This list is starting to sound like some sort of very specific dating website, isn't it? Well, if any of you guys fancy any of these guys, you know where to find them. Next up at number 4 now, we have Beji Caid Essebsi, aged 89, the president of Tunisia. For the past 60 years or so, Beji has been involved in some form of politics in Tunisia since the country gained its independence from France in 1956. Since then, he's seen his country go through a lot of political turmoil, but perhaps the greatest of this was the Tunisian Revolution in 2010, where the people rose up and overthrew the government because of their corruption and oppression. After this, Beji helped steer the country towards stability and eventually became the country's first elected president in 2014. Not bad for an 89-year-old. Coming in at number 3, we have Queen Elizabeth II at 90 years old. Yes, the Queen of England is obviously a queen, but she is also the UK's head of state. And not just them either. The Queen is the head of state for Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Jamaica, Ghana, South Africa, Nigeria, Pakistan, and a whole bunch of other countries out there. Since her coronation in 1952, she has become the world's oldest reigning monarch and has spent most of the past 60 years visiting numerous countries or meeting religious leaders. When they visit the UK, they will often stay at one of the royal palaces, but the Queen also visits leaders and people in their own countries. Throughout her reign, she has made 271 trips to over 120 different countries, and she has done it all without a passport. Next up at number 2 now, we have Robert Mugabe. Robert Mugabe is the president of Zimbabwe. He first rose to power in 1980, becoming the country's prime minister after being a rebel group leader who opposed Zimbabwe's white minority rule. Despite these very heroic beginnings, once Mugabe got comfortable in power, many critics said he seemed reluctant to ever give it up. Whoever seems to oppose him, whether it be journalists or political rivals, they face verbal intimidation, physical attacks, arrests, detentions, and according to Amnesty International, the government headed by Mugabe violates the people's rights to shelter, food, freedom of movement, and the protection of law. The country struggles a lot economically, and 1 in 4 children there are stunted in growth from hunger. Meanwhile, his 91st birthday party cost about $800,000. Something hasn't really been adding up in Zimbabwe for a very long time now, and still Mr. Mugabe shows no signs of budging. And finally now, at number 1, we have Prem Tinsulan Onda, aged 96. Guys, I'm going to be very honest with you here. This is the second time that I have filmed this video. I filmed the first one a few weeks ago and we were about to put it up, and then this man here, the King of Thailand, Bhumibol Adulyadej, died at the age of 88. Rest in peace. But that meant I had to refilm the whole video because everyone had changed position and there was also a new person on our list. That person is Prem Tinsulan Onda, and since Bhumibol's death, he has taken over as the temporary head of state. He was born in 1920, which makes him 96 years old at the time of recording. Until Bhumibol's son takes up the royal throne after him, Prem is holding things down in Thailand. He's very experienced too and has already been Prime Minister of the country back in the 1980s, and before that he was even in the military for over 30 years. He even fought in the Second World War. He might hold this position for as long as a year until the country sorts everything out, but for now he really is the world's oldest leader. Well guys, those were the 10 oldest world leaders on the planet. The morbid thing about this list is that as people die, the list becomes more inaccurate, so we might have to do an updated video one day. Until then, what videos do you guys want to see right here on Most Amazing Top 10? Let me know in the comment section below. My name's Danny Burke. I'll see you down there, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys.